They say a mother's tears carry the weight of unspeakable pain, but no one ever talks about the daughter who caused them. In a small African town where respect is stitched into the very air people breathe, one teenage girl dared to tear that fabric in the most brutal, public way possible, by kicking her own mother. But what the town didn't know was why. And when she finally took her revenge, it wasn't with fire or fists, but something far more haunting. This is not just a story of disrespect. It is a story of silence, of buried pain, and of vengeance that didn't roar, it whispered. The sun was high and unforgiving in the skies of Ikorodu, Nigeria, the day Fine Folua humiliated her mother at the church fundraiser. The air was thick with excitement, vendors lined the compound with trays of puff-puffs and suya, teenagers in matching choir uniforms handed out flyers, and parents chatted about school fees and government failures. But amid the joyous noise, a silence fell like a shroud when Fine kicked her mother hard in the stomach and screamed, "Leave me alone. You're not my god." Gasps ricocheted through the crowd. Mothers covered their children's eyes. Pastor Solomon, mid-prayer, stopped cold. Mama Eniola stumbled backward, holding her midsection, her eyes wide with disbelief, not pain. She said nothing. She simply stood and walked away, barefoot, the hot sand burning into her soles, her dignity in tatters behind her. People would whisper about it for weeks, of course. She must be possessed. That girl needs deliverance. Children of today? No respect. None. But no one asked why. Fine, 17, returned to school like nothing happened. A brilliant literature student, she buried herself in books. Maya Angelou. Buchi Amakita. Ben Okri. Strong women who suffered and survived. She barely spoke to anyone and avoided home. She didn't care that her classmates side-eyed her or that the church community had written her off as a bad seed. She only cared about her sister, Nefemi. Nefemi had vanished 3 years earlier. 14 years old. Gone. Their mother said she'd run away. The police said there wasn't enough evidence. The town said she probably joined bad friends. But Fine knew what happened. And the person responsible? It wasn't some stranger on the road. It was her mother. Fine remembered the bruises on Nefemi's legs. The quiet sobs in the room they shared. The night Nefemi whispered, "He comes when Mama is asleep," but refused to say who. And Fine, just 14 herself, didn't understand. Not then. Until the day she caught Uncle Lade creeping out of the compound at dawn, his belt hanging loose and eyes wild. Fine froze. He didn't even look ashamed. Just warned her with one finger across his lips. She told her mother that morning. And her mother slapped her so hard, she tasted blood. "Don't ever speak of that again. Don't bring shame into this house." The next week, Nefemi was gone. And Uncle Lade? He still came around. With palm wine. With jollof rice. With laughter. Fine never forgot that. Never forgave. So, when Mama Eniola cornered her at the fundraiser, demanding she take the microphone and honor your elders, that rage boiled over. She saw not a mother, but a protector of monsters. And she kicked her. Not just in the stomach, but in the soul. The days after the incident, Mama Eniola fell strangely quiet. She stopped attending church. She refused visitors. Even Uncle Lade stopped coming. Fine suspected something had shifted, but she didn't care. Revenge, she thought, was already served. Until she overheard her mother on a midnight phone call. Her eyes are changing, like Nefemi's before she left. "I can't lose this one too." Fine's chest tightened. Lose? What did she mean lose? Was Nefemi ever lost, or taken? Something didn't add up. That night, she snuck into her mother's bedroom, some strange pull guided her there. And she found it. Underneath the bed. A small blue shoebox sealed with duct tape. Inside, dozens of letters. All addressed to Nefemi O. None sent. She unfolded one. My sweet girl. I heard you crying last night and pretended not to. I was afraid. I thought if I ignored it, it would stop. But it didn't. And I let fear be bigger than love. I know you hate me now. I hate me too. Fionn's throat clenched. Her hands trembled. Letter after letter, confessions, apologies, even mentions of Lade. Her mother knew. She had always known. But why didn't she stop it? Why write letters instead of scream for help? The next morning, Fionn did something she never imagined. She made her mother tea, sat across from her, and asked one simple question. Why? Her mother looked at her for a long, aching moment. The years had aged her, grief clung to her cheeks like ash. When I was 15, she began, I was taken in by my uncle after my parents died. He did worse things than Lade ever did. I told no one. Because in our world, no one believes the girl. They tell you to pray, to endure, to forgive. So when Nefemi told me what she said, I froze. And when she left, I thought, maybe I deserved it. Maybe God was punishing me. She paused. But when you kicked me, it woke me up. Fionn stared, emotions battling in her eyes. I thought you hated me. I hated myself, her mother said quietly. They sat in silence. Two broken women from the same house, trying to rebuild a bridge with truth and tears. But Fionn wasn't done. Forgiveness was not enough. She wanted justice. She started with the church. Fionn joined the youth group, then quietly began inviting girls for private talks. She opened up about Nefemi, about what had happened. And one by one, other voices joined. Whispered stories of Uncle Lade, of other uncles, of teachers, of fathers. Then she started filming them anonymously, protecting their faces, but amplifying their voices. She compiled the footage into a short documentary titled, We Were Not Lying. It went viral. The local news picked it up. So did national networks. Within days, a quiet town in Icordu was buzzing with noise again, but this time, not over puff-puffs or fundraisers. Real names were dropped. Real charges were pressed. Uncle Lade was arrested. And this time, no one was protecting him. In the end, Fionn's revenge wasn't a slap or a kick. It wasn't fire. It wasn't even public disgrace. It was truth. Raw. Unforgiving. Necessary. She didn't destroy her mother, she made her confront herself. She didn't burn the town, she lit a torch for others to see. And maybe, just maybe, Nefemi, wherever she was, would know that someone remembered. That someone fought back. This wasn't the revenge anyone expected. But it was the one they needed. And in a land where folktales often begin with once upon a time, this one ends with something more powerful. Never be silent again. The town of Icordu was no longer the same. Whispers that once fed gossip now carried warnings. Names that once commanded respect now evoked shame. And Fionn? The same girl once called rebellious, cursed, and disgraceful, now walked through the market with silent reverence trailing her. But not everyone was pleased. At a small evening service, Pastor Solomon stood before the congregation, voice trembling with outrage. These children today. They record our secrets. They poison the minds of others. This is not how we handle sin in the house of God. Mama Eniola sat quietly in the back, her head covered, her hands tightly clasped in her lap. She said nothing. She no longer cared for appearances. Her eyes were fixed on the future now, on her daughter. Fian stood up in that very service. "I'm not here to shame the church," she said, steady and bold. "But if the church cannot protect its daughters, it must be questioned." A few people clapped. Others gasped. Some walked out. But Fian was unmoved. Because behind her, 3 girls stood too. Young. Brave. Each holding signs that simply read, "I believe you." That night, Mama Eniola did something she had never done before. She went to the police station and submitted a handwritten statement, not just about Uncle Lade, but about her own uncle. About her silence. About how that silence nearly buried both her daughters. Fian watched her mother exit the station with a strange light in her eyes, not relief, but release. "Does this make you feel better?" her mother asked as they walked home under the amber glow of street lamps. "No," Fian whispered. "But it gives others a chance to feel safe." One morning, nearly 2 months after the fundraiser incident, a letter arrived. A faded envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a single sheet. Written in blue ink, trembling and hurried. "I saw your film. I'm okay. I left because I was scared. I'm in Calabar now. I clean houses. It's not much, but I sleep in peace. Don't stop what you're doing. You saved me. Nifimi." Fian dropped to her knees, the paper clutched against her chest. Her mother knelt beside her, tears flowing freely. Not the tears of regret, but of reunion, even from a distance. Nifimi wasn't gone. She had survived. She had escaped the silence. But the story didn't end there. Fian started a community group called Omo Ayami, My Mother's Child, to support survivors of abuse and educate families. Schools invited her to speak. Girls wrote to her. Mothers apologized. The cycle was cracking, piece by piece. And in the very church where she had kicked her mother before the entire town, she stood once more, this time, hand in hand with her. They told the story together. Not just of pain, but of healing. And of a revenge that redefined what justice truly meant. Months passed. What began as a single act of rebellion, one kick, had become a national conversation. But with attention came threats. Anonymous messages. Phone calls in the night. At school, Fian found strange notes in her locker. "You're tearing families apart. You will regret this. You think you're a hero?" Fear crept in, like a slow, dark fog. Not just for Fian, but for her mother too. One evening, they returned home to find their gates smeared with red palm oil, a traditional warning in their culture, symbolizing anger or a curse. Mama Eniola's hands trembled as she cleaned it. "Maybe we should stop," she whispered. Fian paused. If Nifimi had stopped, she wouldn't be alive today. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the heat. Her mother slowly nodded. The threats didn't silence them. They strengthened their purpose. But there was one more person who needed closure, Pastor Solomon. A month after the Omo Ayami group was featured on national TV, Fian received a letter. Handwritten. Scripted in perfect cursive. "I judged you too quickly. I see now that we failed to protect, and instead protected names. Forgive me. I want to make it right." That Sunday, the pulpit felt different. For the first time, Pastor Solomon opened his sermon with a confession. "I was wrong. The church must not be a shelter for secrets. From today, we open our arms to the broken, not just the holy." The congregation was stunned. And then, slowly, they stood. Clapping. Some crying. Change was coming. One quiet evening, just as the dusty winds of Harmattan brushed the town, Fian sat outside, notebook in hand. She stared at the stars, wondering if Nefimi might be doing the same. If she missed home. If she still feared shadows. She wrote her a letter. Dear Nefimi, I kicked Mama because I wanted the world to see. But I stayed because I wanted the world to change. You didn't leave us, we left you. But now we're fighting back. Come home when you're ready. Or don't. Either way, I know you survived. And that's enough. She folded the letter and placed it in the same box that once held her mother's unsent apologies. Now it held forgiveness. The town would always remember the girl who kicked her mother in public. But what they remembered more was the daughter who rebuilt her family with truth. Her revenge wasn't in destruction. It was in redemption. And that was not what they expected. Silence protects the abuser. Truth protects the wounded. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is speak. It had been nearly a year since the incident at the church fundraiser. Fian, now in her final year of secondary school, had grown into someone the entire town now looked up to, not because she was flawless, but because she was fearless. Her name had appeared in newspapers, on youth panels, and even in a regional documentary called The Silence Breakers. But despite the recognition, she remained grounded. Because this wasn't about fame. It was about faces. Nefimi's face. Her mother's face the day she cried. The faces of young girls who now knew they were not alone. One afternoon, as Mama Eniola was peeling yams in the kitchen, a knock came at the gate. Fian, dusting off her jeans, went to open it. And there she was. Nefimi. Older. Leaner. But still with that same half-smile she used to wear when she was being mischievous. She didn't say a word. Neither did Fian. The two sisters simply hugged, tight, trembling, and long enough for the pass to crack. Behind them, Mama Eniola stepped outside, yam still in hand, eyes wide. She froze, unsure whether to run forward or kneel in apology. Nefimi looked at her mother, then slowly walked over and handed her something small. It was a wrapped bar of soap. Smells like home, she said softly. And that was it. No grand speech. No dramatic confrontation. Just three women, broken, changed, but still here. In the following weeks, Nefimi slowly reintegrated. Not fully, but in fragments. She attended therapy sessions with Fian. Sat in the back row of Omo Ayemi meetings. And one evening, at a community forum organized in Ikordu's town hall, she finally spoke. I thought no one would believe me. I thought I had to disappear to be free. But my sister reminded me that silence isn't freedom. Speaking is. The audience was silent, some in tears. Even Pastor Solomon wiped his eyes discreetly. That night, Fian realized something deep. Her revenge had never been about punishing her mother, or humiliating her. It had been a cry for someone to listen. Someone to acknowledge that what happened was real. That Nefimi mattered. And now? The entire town was listening. A month later, Omo Ayemi received a government grant. They began building a small counseling center, a safe haven for girls with stories they'd been told not to tell. The plaque outside read, "For the girls who were told to keep quiet. May they speak freely now." And as the sun set on another dusty Ikorda day, Fian stood outside the building, watching kids run past, their laughter echoing through the air. Her mother stood beside her, aged but proud. "You've turned your pain into a purpose," she said. Fian looked ahead. "No, we did. Revenge doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes, it looks like healing. And the deepest healing often begins with a single, painful truth spoken aloud."